Welcome to the second issue of Think Fishing with myself, Des Ship. Today I've brought you to an absolutely fantastic reservoir called Shearwater near Longleat Safari Park. I come here about 3 weeks ago and fished a match. I've not fished here for 20 years and I actually caught 127 pound and won the match, so I had an absolute awesome day's fishing. So I'm going to show you today exactly how I fished that match and also how these venues have changed over the last 20 years. Years ago it was all about chucking a feeder out with pinkies, trying to get these tiny little bites, and now these bream have changed. There's lots of carp anglers chucking lots of bait in. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to prepare your bait for a session like today. Right, I'm just going to mix the ground bait up now. This is a real versatile mix. You don't have to use it just on this venue, you can use it on lots of other venues. I've got a bag of F1, so I'm going to stick that in the bucket. It sounds quite a little, quite a lot of ground bait. I've got 3 kilos mixed up, but on venues like this, you could catch up to 200 pound of bream. So 3 bags of ground bait ain't that much. And I've also got a bag of Super Crumb bream. So I'm going to stick that in as well. Get that in there. And before I put some water, I'm just going to mix it around dry with a drill. This is going to take quite a lot of water, so you might have to give yourself a time. You can always mix this the night before. If you know you're going to a venue like this, you're going to need that amount of ground bait, you can always do it in your garage the night before. I'll get some water. Like I said, it's going to take quite a bit of water, so probably put like at least 2 pints in there at the start. Drill it around. It's a really easy mix to mix up as well. With a drill, obviously helps you out a lot. So that's nearly 3 pints in there. That's come up really nice already. Just get your hands to the bottom of the bucket as well, because sometimes the drill doesn't get the sort of real dry bits right in the corner. So what I would do now, I would leave this for about 15 minutes, and you need to do this really when you get to your peg. So I'll put my box down, do my ground bait, and then get on with setting more gear up. The only other thing I've used on the day, and what I would use if I was just coming pleasure fishing, is pellets. Loads of pellets go into these venues, so it's really important you've got some with you. I just got some 2 mils there, and I'm just going to soak these. I'm not going to do loads, probably about 1.5 pints, something like that. Put them in some water, and I'm going to leave them for only about 30 seconds. Not very long. I don't want them like a mush, because I'm going to be putting these through the feeder. I want them actually like individual pellets. So like leave them for just a little bit longer, make sure they all sink, and then all I do then is just drain the water off. And by the time we're ready to go, they would have probably, after about half an hour, these would have gone soft all the way through, but they would still be individual pellets. Just like that, drain the water off, leave them by your ground bait, and then we're going to get on with doing some more gear. Well, I've left this ground bait about 15-20 minutes and I've just come back to it. I've added a little bit more water, and that's the sort of consistency I'm looking for, because I'm going to be putting this on the pole and through the feeder, so it's important you get the consistency right. I call that like a damp sort of mix really. It breaks up really nice, but if you want to, 2 squeezes, and like you can see from there, it's just nice. It's just going to break up. So if you want to, you can make a hard ball, you can make a soft ball, but it's going to fall apart. So it's perfect for today. Obviously, I'm not going to put the pellets in the mix. I'm going to be adding these to my feeder as and when I need to. So don't just get putting all those in the ground bait. I'm going to add these on my side tray, and I'll show you what I do with the pellets as we go along today. So what I'm going to do now is get back to the box and show you all the equipment I've set up for today's session. Okay, the gear I've set up for today, I'm fishing about 40, just over 40 metres out. So I've clipped up. I've got an 11'6" absolute rod, really nice bream rod, like sort of a medium feeder if you like. I've got 5.5 pound direct mono. Really simple setup. And all I've done there is I've tied a snap swivel in a loop, and like you can see, I've tied some little knots just to stiffen that area up if you like. But I'm not gonna put the hook length on yet, because I want to be able to put some bait out at the start with a feeder. I'll show you later on how I put my hook length on that rig. So that's that. Just to go to the tip, actually, just to say something about the tip, it's not a real sensitive tip. It's a carbon tip. It's the number 3 tip for this rod, which is the most aggressive tip of the lot. There's 1, 2 and 3. This is number 3. Because if you use a real soft tip, and I'm casting out like 40 metres, I'm not fishing really small feeders, the tip will help you cast a distance. And I'm not fishing for tiny skimmers here, I'm fishing for quality skimmers. So that's a good point. Make sure you put the right tip in for how you're fishing. So that's the feeder setup. Well, I've set up 2 pole rigs for today. It's about 9 foot deep, and as most reservoirs, it's still actually sloping, but I can't do nothing about that. I've just found a nice area. Rig on today, this is sort of my standard rig if you like. Number 6 slip elastic, nice for catching decent sized fish. I'm not looking to catch tiny fish on the pole, because this sort of lake has got good quality fishing. I've got a Gram Intered free float wire stem, because I think the wind's going to get up later on, so that's going to help the presentation. 013 mainline. I'm not fishing really light. That helps you with stops you getting tangles as well, especially when you're dropping your bulk straight down, so that's really important. You can fish heavier main lines. I've got an Olivet about 2 foot from the hook, and I've got some stots holding that in place. A real good tip as well, as you can see from that, most Olivets come with little bits of rubber stuck out the end, or the bottom and the top. I nip them right up with a pair of nail cutters. For me personally, it just stops the Olivet from twisting. And all I do then, you can use stots or shot. I'm a big fan of stots at the moment. I think they're really good, and they protect your line. And just slide them down so everything locks in place. Quite a nice positive rig. Number 8 stots is droppers. I'm not fishing with like little 10s and 9s, number 8s. And I've got a 15 centimetre hook length to an 18 PR32. On this venue, you have to use barbless hooks. If I was allowed to use barbed hooks, I probably would, because it's a natural venue with roach and that, and we all know they do come off, so I would use a barbed hook. But today, barbless hooks, PR32. So nice and simple. The only other rig I've set up is a 4B16. I've got the same elastic, 6 slip elastic, same line, but on this rig I've set up a 4B16 Silverfish 6. It's got a carbon stem, and I've got a shot on there. That's number 8's bulked up. I can always spread these around, and with a carbon stem float I can watch this bait going down through the water. And there's some really big roach in this place, and sometimes they can be a bit crafty, so I always set this up. Don't always pick it up, but it's there if I need it. A little bit, I've got some number 10s on there as droppers. Like I said, it's a bit of a hairy fairy rig, but sometimes it can make a difference. And I've got an 18 PR32 on there instead of a 16. So there you go. And I've set these about that far over depth, just to start with. It's nice and calm at the moment, but we all know these places can get really windy really quickly. So that's the 2 pole rigs. Obviously got my big pot set up. And the next thing I'm going to show you, obviously before we start, I'm going to have to go back to my bait. There's a few little bits and pieces I want to show you what I'm going to put in my bait before I board it on the pole line. So I've got my bait tubs ready to go. I'm going to do my pole mix first. And what I'm going to do is get 6 one-handers out the bucket. 3, 4, 5, 6. This is my pole mix. This is what I'm going to be chucking on the pole at the start. And in that, I'm going to get myself about half a pot of corn, the good old sweet corn, half a pot of casters, and also a small hand of red maggots. I'm just going to mix all that round. And this is what I would do at the start of the match. I've got a good depth on the pole. I know I might be able to catch on the pole, so you obviously got to have that in your armoury. So I've mixed that round. I'm just going to make now, I'm not going to make them rock hard. One, because I'm fishing on a slope, and two, I want to make a big area on the bottom for these fish to graze over. So I'm literally going to make, just squeeze them twice like that. One, two. Two, like that. I can make the last ball up as I go, to be honest. So I've got 5 big balls there, and I could probably make another one. I'm not fussed about that. I can make that up as I'm balling it in. Me feeder bait. I've got a tub of ground bait there. I've got me micros. I've got some sweet corn. I've got some casters. I've got some live maggots, and I've also got some dead maggots. There's not a lot going on there really. Right, as you can see, I've got my balls ready for the pole line, but I'm not going to ball the pole in straight away. Especially, I know if you're a pleasure fishing, it's not going to make any difference. But for me, in that match that day, I wanted to make sure I got out there and got the bream in me peg. One, because of noise, and like I said, keep going back to these carp anglers spotting in. These bream are used to bait going in, noises like the spod going in, and that's what I wanted to make. I didn't want to miss my chance. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to get on the feeder rod. No hook length on at the moment because I'm just going to get some feed out. So I've got a big 30 gram feeder on. Just clip that on. And in my feeder mix, I've got probably like 2 big handfuls of ground bait, and in there I'm just going to put a handful of micros and a handful of corn. I'm not going to put any dead maggots in there or nothing. This is about bream fishing. For me now, on these waters, it's about putting ground bait in and pellets. If it was hard conditions, if I thought it was going to be rock hard, and maybe I drew in a different area of the lake where I had to catch roach, maybe smaller fish, I might put some maggots and casters in. But when you're on fish on these venues, I think it's really important you just try and put ground bait and micros in. So like I said, I've got that in there. I'm going to fill my feeder up. Really important, I'm not going to squeeze it in that hard. I'm just going to give it one squeeze like that. So I've got myself marked up with a feature on the other side, like a tree. About 45 turns. Bomb that out, it's the clip, and I'm going to count it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's 9 counts to the bottom, really deep. So what I'm going to do, just strike that out, make sure you give it a good strike. And this is what I've done on the match. So I know I got 9 turns now to the bottom before I hit the bottom with a full feeder of bait. And what I want to do now is to create what a carp angler would do. So I'm going to fill that up again. Really important. 1 little squeeze is just enough to get it out where you're actually casting your feeder. So look, get your marker on the other side. Hit the clip. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and strike the feeder out. Make sure you give it a good strike to get the bait out. That's mid-water. It's nowhere near the bottom. And this is what I done in the match. I tried to sort of do what a spod would do, really, to create a cloud. I'm also making noise, and these fish, like I said, these fish are so tuned into this sort of fishing now, it's really important. So I'm going to do it again. Little squeeze. And it's also creating a big bed of bait on the bottom, a big area, which bream love. So hit the clip again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and strike out. So you can just imagine what's happening now. You've got all those particles going down through the water. And I'm going to probably cast in about 7 or 8 times. Now the guys around me in that match that day didn't do this, and I caught immediately, and I was convinced it's because I'd done this. So that is really important. Little squeeze. Don't put your hook length on, because you can get in a bit of a twizzle. Hit the clip again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Strike the feeder out. Like I said, I'm not putting anything else in apart from micros and a little bit of corn at the moment. So hopefully the session is going to be good. Same again, little squeeze. Like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can sort of vary it if you want. You know, sometimes you can count to 2, so it makes a massive cloud. I normally go about half depth personally. And I'll do that 2 more times. And hopefully these bream would have come to that noise, come into the cloud. Two, 3, 4. I'll strike it out. Probably gone through, I'm not sure really, probably about 2 handfuls of ground bait so far. So you can have to go through a little bit of bait doing this. It's not, you know, it's not a massive feeder. And always try and fish within your limits. You know, don't get. I know some people go to these, you know, massive long chucks. I'm not the, you know, I'm not the best of casters in the world for chucking long distances. So I always fish in, you know, within my means really. I'd rather do it 100% right than try and cast miles and do it sort of 80% right. So I'm gonna, now, I've cast that about 8 or 9 times. I'm just gonna stick the feeder on the rod like that. Next thing, I'm going to chuck my ground bait in on the pole. I'm going to pick my pole pot up. My pole pot I'm going to use as a marker. Go out, got my ball and arms on, so everything's nice and safe. And I'll put the pot in as a marker, but put it upside down. So if you do have a ball go in your pot, it's not going to break your sections. Like I said, I've got my ground bait, not mixed hard. Same sort of thing as what I'm doing on the feeder really. Trying to make a cloud and make an air on the bottom. As you, the noise from them, you can sort of hear them going. They're not like a cannonball going in, it's quite soft. Just enough to sort of get out there. Nice, got a little bit left, like I said earlier. Don't waste it. Just make a ball. I can see the cloud. I can see the cloud off that ground bait there actually. It's created a nice big cloud. And I know all those casters, that little bit of cord now is going to make a big area on the bottom. I'm not going to pot anything in. Just use that as a marker. So both lines have been primed, feeder and pole. Now I'm going to connect my hook to my feeder setup. I do like these hook spool things for the feeders. I think they're absolutely brilliant. I'm going to start off with a 2-foot hook length. I can always vary this. I've got some 3-foot ones, or I can just cut these down to make them shorter. So really easy, just take one off. There's the hook comes off. Stick that down to one side. Just go into the hook. Like I said earlier, you have to fish barbless hooks on this venue. That is a 16-412. I used to do a lot of this fishing years ago, and I always found long shank hooks for feeder fishing for bream and skimmers were always the best. So I'm going to stick with that. Like I said, 2 foot of 014 precision power with a nice sensible size loop on the end. Right, I'm now going to connect the hook length to the actual feeder setup. As you see for that, that's the loop that the feeder is sat on. So I've got a snap swivel, there's the loop, there's the couple of little knots I just put in there just to stiffen everything up. But as you can see above it, there's a number 10 stop. That's there for a real good reason. So I'm going to show you now how to connect the hook length. It's really simple. It's the same sort of principle as if you were connecting your pole rig to your Dacron connector on your pole. What I do, that's my hook length, put that round, and all I need to do then is bring your hook length around your main line, and then put the hook through the loop. Like that, and then just bring everything down. Make sure it's above the last knot. As you can see, that comes round. Just let the knot go through the loop, like so. And you can see it then, that loop's now coming tighter and tighter. And then when it's tight, just a little bit of water on it, and then bring it down to your knot, and just tighten it off. And that sits on there. So that's creating your paternoster. Okay, now this little number 10 stop, I just bring down. If you were fishing with braid, you wouldn't have to do this because the line will actually eat into the braid. But because of mono, it can slide up and down. So what I do then is lock that into place with a number 10 stop. And I find for long range feeder fishing, this is the best way of setting it up. You don't get hardly any line twist in your hook length. All the twist is taken out from this setup down here on your swivel. And I've been using it for years and it's been absolutely brilliant. So there's the finished rig. Nice and simple. Paternoster setup. As you can see from that, even though that's only 4 inches, that piece there, I've now got 8 inches of movement, which is going to literally drag your rod in if you get a proper tow round. But that's the whole principle of it. It's never, the fish is never actually feeling the weight of the feeder. Obviously on this venue, I'm allowed to fish this today. On some venues, you might have to fish a running rig. But luckily on the Shearwater, I am allowed to fish a paternoster, which is my preferred way of fishing on the feeder, to be honest. I'm going to start on the same feeder as what I chucked out at the start. 30 grams, sort of not a massive feeder, just a nice feeder. So 2 foot hook length to start with. Can vary that as we go along. But let's get out there and see if there's any fish over that ground bait. Right, so I'm going to start the session just on double red maggot, dead red maggot. I'm hooking one maggot through the normal way, and I'm going to hook the other one right through the nose end. Just like that. Loads more hooks showing, and it also stops the twisting as well. Same mix as what I got, a few micros, a little bit of corn in there. Fill the feeder up, and just that little tiny squeeze. Can always vary that, but I just want to start off and just see what happens. So I've got myself marked up. Nice cast, hit the clip. I'm going to drop the rod in. I just like to feel the line through my fingers like that, and it helps. You can like peel it, you can just feel it a bit, and then watch the line sinking. Sit at the bottom, little flick. And what I do then is I keep winding my reel, just to try and keep a little bit of tension in the tip. So if anything touches that, I'm going to see the bite. So just keep winding. Just a little bit. So really what it's doing, winding the reel, is basically keeping that little bit of tension in the tip. And if it's windy, it helps you even more for bite indication. So I just try and keep that little bit of tension in the tip. So like I said, if anything touches it, I'll see the bite. You can just see then, I'm just now sort of starting to wind into the tension of the feeder. So when it starts to feel the tension of the feeder, you just slow up a little bit. It takes a little while to get into this, but it's really, really important that you do this. So I'm just getting to a stage now where it's actually tightened up to the feeder. So that's it. So there's no messing about. I'm not going back to my rod. Oh, there we go, it bites straight away. I'm not sure how big this is. When I come a few weeks back, they were averaging about 2.5 pounds, with the odd sort of 2 to 3 pounder mixed in. Just take your time. Got to go a little bit carefully here because obviously on the pole line there is a shelf, so I'm trying to keep them up really. I don't want to drag them right into the, keep them low. What a brilliant start that is. Probably about a pound looking at that. Just try and keep that feeder out of the landing net as well while you're bringing them in. And all I do is do that. Still got my back wind on. I'm in control of the fish, and you can get out of the fish. Lovely skimmer. What a brilliant start. Double red maggot again. I think that one of the most important things is what you put through that feeder. When you're trying to catch big weights of bream, just go careful about putting casters and something like chopped worm through it. I know on some venues you have to do it, but on these sort of waters, all you need ground bait, a few micros and some corn, and just dead maggot. There's nothing else there for them to eat apart from them 2 red maggots really. So it's like a target bait. And I cast that again, hit the clip, get down, get the rod down under the water, and I just use my 2 fingers like that just to help it sink the line. And if anything touches it, sometimes you can see it go all slack. Just hit the bottom then, sink the line, that last couple of feet of line, and then start winding. Just so it keeps the tip. So it's like as if you were fishing. It's the sort of tension you want in your tip. Makes a huge difference. So just keep winding nice and slow. I bet some people watch me feeder fishing and think, well, what's he doing? He keeps winding. But it's just trying to take the slack out of your main line to the feeder as quick as possible. But it also gives you the best chance of seeing the bite. You can just see the tension now, just getting up. And just slow down the wind, and there's a bite straight away. That might have been a roach bite, that absolutely screamed round. Well, I've just changed over to a lighter feeder and a smaller feeder, just to see if I could get the old one on the drop. And the first cast, it's probably got about 3/4 of the way down. I've hooked this fish. I'm not sure whether if it's a bream, it's a big one. It might be a carp. There is quite a lot of carp in Shearwater, so you never know. It doesn't feel like a bream to me, but we'll find out in a minute. It's not sort of gone off like a carp. It's just nodding. There's obviously some big hybrids and big roach in here. That's the lovely thing about these places, you just don't know what you're going to hook next. So enjoyable. There we go, just changed to a smaller feeder, caught this one on the drop. Second fish. Hopefully more to come. Brilliant fishing. Let's get him back. Well, it's been about an hour now and I've caught a few fish. It's not been absolutely solid, to be honest. It's been nice and steady, but the big thing is a lot of these fish are coming on the drop. They do not want to go on the bottom. It's probably like 15 foot deep there, and I've got to work really hard to catch. I've got to keep casting. I've tried a short hook length, come off the short hook length, made no difference. I've gone back to a two foot hook length and caught a nice fish straight away. Get me disgorger out. I forgot to get me disgorger out. Look at that. Lovely Shearwater bream. And I've also, that's why on my bait tray, I've got a little container there which I've put some micros and some corn in. But what I'm doing at the moment, I've got that container there, it's just got ground bait in. It's just the mix that I've done up earlier with nothing in it. And I've started just putting that in with nothing in it at all, which gives the bream no excuse at all. If they want to eat something, they're either eating the ground bait or me maggots. So I'm just going for that. This is the sort of things you've got to try when you're bream and skimmer fishing and feeder fishing. Just put it in real soft, smaller feed like you can see from there, and that's a 20. I think that's a 22 gram feeder. I was on a 30. I've gone to a 22 gram just to make it go down a little bit slower, and it's making a big difference. So I'm hitting me clip really hard, trying to get the line down. I've put a bit of Fairy on me line as well, just a bit of watered down Fairy liquid. It's just at the bottom. There we go. That is exactly what you've got to keep doing. It's frightening what these bream are like. Just them little changes, weight of feeder, size of feeder, you know, bit longer hook lengths. Some days you'll come to a venue like this and you'll be fishing 6-inch hook lengths. Other days they're all there, they're all in that column of bait, and you've got to keep working harder. The harder you work sometimes, the better it is. It's, you know, it's all well and good going out on the days when you're casting your feeder out and it hits the bottom, you wait 2 or 3 minutes and it goes round. But even in that match I fished, the longer the match went on, the harder I had to work, the more regular I had to cast out to keep catching. And you're just trying to build, you know, get the fish back in your peg, keep them in that column of bait. And they just change, you know, like I said, just cancel out everything. That was just ground bait, nothing else in it apart from the ground bait. Another nice fish. It's just so enjoyable, this style of fishing, when you've got to work at it. You see a lot of people just sit on the feeder. I had a guy next to me on that match and he just sat there for ages and ages and he didn't really cop on what I was doing, you know. So it's really important that you try these things. Keep casting. Like peas in a pod them. 2.5 pound a shout, doesn't take long to do a big weight of them. And I'm still topping the polar. Every sort of half an hour I've stopped fishing and I've potted a ball in on my pole line. And I'm also now and again, because obviously I want to be concentrating on this, the pole line is sort of my backup line really. And what I'll do every sort of 15 minutes, I'll get my catapult and fire 2 great big pouchfuls of casters in. Because I don't want the fish to come off the bottom, I want them to stay on the bottom if I can on the pole line. But I'm not sort of giving it that much time. When I do feed the pole line, I'm feeding it heavy and not very often. See if we can get another one. So cast out to your mark, wait till it hits the clip, hold it dead tight and straight down. And then try and feed that line, try and get that line down. I've actually had a couple, I reckon they're probably half depth. So as the line's going down, it just sometimes just stops, it stops sinking. So you know there's one that's had it on the drop. So just keep winding. Keep that little tension on the tip. It's just one of those days you've got to keep working. I won't leave it there long. That was a little tiny indication then. Might have been a liner, could have been a roach. I'm not worried about that because it's all about today. It's all about casting in really regularly. Straight in again, next chuck. Probably, I've got a count of 9 there and that was probably on a count of 8 that had that. And some days you can, like, I've even tried in the match the other week that I fished, I even tried putting the ground bait in hard to try and drive them on the bottom. And they wouldn't have it. They just want to be off that bottom. Just in that column of bait. Brilliant fishing. Absolutely brilliant. But it's really important, I'm hitting that clip really hard, trying to keep the line dead tight. And like I said, sometimes you can actually see the line sinking and all of a sudden it just stops. That's a bite. And you know it's a count of 9. So obviously if you get a count of 7, it stops sinking, you know there's a fish on. And little skimmers are the same sometimes. When I go to Porth Reservoir in the Whiteacres Festival, I fish Porth Reservoir, exactly the same. And a lot of the fish are caught on the drop or just as the feeder hits the bottom. They're not as big as this mine, unfortunately. But the same principle. Beautiful fish then. And I'm sure this is all because of the carp anglers, you know, are spotting loads of bait in. That's a good fish, that one. I have to use both hands. Look at that, absolutely immaculate fish that. Look at that. Fantastic fishing. I love it. I just love this style of fishing. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Not lost a single fish on them hooks either. Only a 16 hook. I could probably go up to a 14, but why bother when you're not losing any? As I said, you can see from that, that's a 20 gram feeder. So I've gone from a 30 to a 20. smaller feeder. I've actually tried the same weight feeder in a bigger size. It's not as good. I don't know why. These are the sort of things that you've got to try. They make a big difference. Not change nothing. Double maggot. And if you wanted to, you could put a piece of corn on. To be honest, the way I'm fishing, it's just as well fish double maggot. It's nice and easy. It's quick. It's all about how you load that feeder up, how you make it go into your peg. Like I said, nice big chuck, hit the clip, follow it down, keep everything tight, rod down. And I'll just do that. I've always done that. It's probably just a bit of a weird thing, really. But sometimes you can feel the line. If the tension goes before you think it's at the bottom, you know it's a fish. Just hit bottom then. And then straight away, like I said, wind. Just keep that tip. It's a massive thing in feeder fishing for me, that. Keeping that tension on. You're just taking up the slack line as quick as possible. You see a lot of people, they do that. And then they do that again and they're going back and they got to do that. Then the tip comes back and they do that. If you keep winding until that tension's down to the feeder, it just saves a lot of messing around. There's a bite then. That was on the bottom that time. And the real aggressive, some of the bites you get are so aggressive when you do get the odd one on the bottom. Not like the good old days when you were fishing for these little tiny bites like that. And I think that's a lot of that is to do with, you know, them being caught quite a lot, the way they feed in. It's just a lot more aggressive. Just keep the tension on. Just try and be as smooth as possible as well. Well, I moaned that one on. Well, I couldn't say I couldn't catch on the bottom, but I've just had that one on the bottom. It's a smaller fish, mind, but it's a nice one. I'm always thinking about what I should try, you know, my lovely skimmer, look at that, fin perfect. So I'm always thinking, like I did with my first issue, I'm always thinking about what should I do. Should I put some red maggots in? I remember last time I come, I actually went through a stage of putting quite a few red dead maggots in because the sort of swim died off a bit, and that caught me a few fish, but that was later in the match when things were slowing up. But always think about that. I don't really want to put casters in. Not really bothered about that. I just, you know, I am fishing for bream, and I know some venues you go to, you might have to put casters in, but here I just think casters are wrong. Just trying to feel that down. Now that's gone a bit slack then. That might be a... No, it didn't. I thought that might have been the slack then, but it wasn't. I've even gone down to 12 gram feeders on some venues. That's a 20. I've even gone down to a 12. Cast in again. Nice big whack. The wind's got up a bit. Hit the clip, follow it down. Just try and feel that line. It's lovely when you catch them on the dropper. It's brilliant. Sink the line. Just keep winding. Here we go. Straight round. That's weird because that was on the bottom as well, that fish. So they've changed at the moment. I had 2 or 3 on the drop, and I've done nothing different. I've put the feed in the same, and I think sometimes they're up in the water, and all of a sudden you get a little bulk of them go down. Feels like a nice fish. But never forget that pole line either. I'm always thinking about that, as well as on what I'm trying to do here with my feeder. I'm always thinking, when should I stop and put a ball in? Even though I'm catching on this, if you're a match angler, then obviously that's important to have your backup line. A proper nodding one, this one. Oh, hello. Now I've got my reel on with the anti-reverse on. I can just play the fish, you know, just wind down nice. Another nice, beautiful fish that. Nice dark Nice dark bream. Oh. So what I'm going to do, when I get this in the net, also we've been fishing for a couple of hours now, I'm going to give the pole a go. Because if you were in a match, then if you can catch them twice as quick on the pole, all the better. I'm going to get the hook out of this one. Look at that, fin perfect again. Brilliant fishing. Really good. Right, I'm just going to go on the pole. Same bait, the old red maggot. That's I've been topping it up. I've not been throwing balls in, I've just been cupping them. So it'll be interesting now to see what happens. On a big lake like this, some days, they just don't come in on the pole. But I'm not going to write it off straight away. Because like on that feeder, you might have to make noise. I might have to keep throwing balls of ground bait in. But just to see if there's anything there at the moment. Like I said, I've been loose feeding big pouches of casters over the top as well, quite aggressively. I'm not sort of catapulting 5 or 6, I've been catapulting like a big pouch full of casters, but not all the time, every sort of 15 minutes. And just hopefully something will be sat over it. Oh, there we go. Straight in. Doesn't feel like a big fish. Might be a roach actually. So that's normal really, you know, with that depth of water I've probably got like 9 foot. Lovely depth for roach. Yeah, nice big roach. Look at that. Lovely fish. Oh, look at that. Absolutely. Probably never seen a hook before that fish. Look at that. Brilliant. Don't get better than that. So double red maggot again. Like I said, I've been putting casters. I've put casters in my ground bait as well, topping up, like I said, every sort of half an hour or so. Just best bait, always go out on double maggot. Just to see if there's any fish in your peg and then work from there. That's what I do normally. And it's really important, drop your rig in. So what I'm actually doing is getting where I've balled it and where I've cut, drop my Olivet exactly where I've balled it, and then just let everything go down as fast as possible. But make sure that Olivet's on the end of your pole, especially because I'm actually fishing on a bit of a slope. And I won't be afraid either to chuck little balls in either. Some of these, some venues I go to, natural venues, it's about making some noise. And if I sit there for a while, I might pot in and try and find out what's best. Sometimes you've got to keep chucking balls in. They come to the noise. Or just lift your rig out 18 inches or so, let it go back down. Probably could do a little bit of ripper on the water today, to be honest. Oh, there we go. There's a fish. Oh, this feels a bit more, a bit larger. Gone off down the slope. Hopefully a bream or a skimmer. Hopefully not a carp. Proper nodding fish that. I said about 3 inches over depth, which gives me that leeway because I'm fishing on that slope. If you know, I can just flick it past the tip a little bit, and I know I got a bit of line on the bottom. Bream, I think. Oh yes, that's what we want. Lovely fish that. This is when you can do a really, really big weight now. Getting these on the pole. Lovely 2-pound fish. Absolutely beautiful. And what's going through my mind at the moment is I've just caught a roach, I've just caught a 2-pound bream, but the decisions I got to make on a big venue like this is, have I got to keep chucking ground bait in? It was so obvious on the feeder, I've got to keep casting out to make a bite. I can't just sit there and wait. I have to make a bit of noise, and they want something going for the water, and that could be the same on the pole line. But at the moment, I just want to see what happens. Like I said, I've caught 2 fish in sort of a 10-minute spell. It's not solid. So I think my next step would be, I might just throw a ball in and see what happens. But I'll just give it another, oh, there's a bite then anyway. There's a couple of venues I fish near where I live, and it's incredible that you can sit there, you think there's no fish in your peg, and you throw a ball in or 2 balls in with a bit of bait in, and immediately you catch a fish. And most of the time it's either skimmers or bream. They will not settle on the bottom some days. You've got to keep chucking bait in to keep the fish coming. So I've got me ground bait bowl to my left with a few casters mixed in with some ground bait and a little bit of corn again. I'll just give this another 5 or so minutes. There we go, there's a fish. Another bream again. And don't be scared, you know, don't be scared to feed on top of feeding fish. Like on that feeder, it's amazing that they just keep coming to that noise of the feeder hitting the water. They're not scared of it. And we're not in summer mode here, you know what I mean? The water's still cold. A nice skimmer. Probably not as big as the feeder fish, but really nice fish to catch on the pole. Real lively fish that. Woo, baby. Hear that? Immaculate. So it's the 4th drop in, 4 fish. I had a roach, and this is my 3rd skimmer. So what I'm going to do after this, I'm actually going to cup a ball in with some casters in it and a bit of corn. And I said, don't be as scared to feed on top of feeding fish, especially on big waters like this. It's completely different to commercials. You know, you can fish a little bit more line on the bottom. That was actually a bit of a lift bite, and it just went under really, really slow. If that was a commercial, it'd probably been a liner, to be honest. Look at that. Lovely. A little bit bigger, that one. Probably 2 and a bit pound. And what I'm going to do now, even though I've just caught 4 fish, I'm going to pot in a little ball. So I'm just going to make a ball with one hand, not rock hard. And see from that, got a few casters in it. And stick that in and see what happens. Like I said, it might just be the case, we might have to throw them in. But if you throw them in, it's like that feeder. You might get them to come off the bottom. I'm just going to start by cupping just slightly short because I'm fishing on a slope. So I've just come back about 4 or 5 inches on my pole. No point changing anything, you know, double dead maggot. You can actually see that ball of ground bait activating all the little bits that are coming off of it. Really important, like I said, bulk out the water, bring your bulk to where you drop your ball in and let it all go down. Like that. It's really important that. Sometimes you get the bream and the roach and the skimmers on the drop. It's a bit weird really, well I've caught a roach first chuck and then I've had 3 skimmers. Oh, a little indication then. There we go. Oh, missed that. And drop it out, drop it in again. I've got a nice bit of line between me float and me pole as well. It's not like a commercial where you'd be having sort of a foot of line. I've given myself a little bit more. It does help fishing in deeper water. There we go, that was on just as it settled. I think that might be a roach. Quality fish. Oh, it's a skimmer. Not seen one of them on the feeder. I said I'm not going to loose feed. I've been loose feeding while I've been on the feeder, but I'm not going to loose feed. I'm not going to try and bring these fish up. It's nice to, when you're not fishing the feeder, you can give it 2 big pouches every sort of quarter of an hour or so, and it just creates a big area. But I'm not going to loose feed now. Not now I've got them on the bottom. If I went out there and I didn't catch nothing, and I tried putting a ball of ground bait in, no response, and the next time I went on the pole, I might start loose feeding, just to try and get some competition. But this has gone exactly how I wanted it, to be fair. Bring your bolt right over that ball, just like that, and your float sort of sits there for a while until the bolt catches up with it. Really difficult to see me float at the moment. You get them little waves on the lake and it's bloody difficult to see. Oh, there we go, lovely bite that. So what's going through my mind now is, when am I going to feed it again? And it's steady, it's not solid, it's not like absolutely heaving, it's just steady fishing. So I'm not going to force it too much. Just going to try and keep them on the bottom. Could be on for a really big weight if this carries on. Whoa. Get that. Well looked again. Well, I've had 5 or 6 fish on the pole, probably fishing about half an hour or so, but I've topped up twice. The second time I've topped up with the pot, I've had no response at all. But it doesn't mean to say that the fish aren't there. Some of these venues I fish, you need to throw. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the pole in me rest. I've got 2 bowls mixed up, only one-handers I've made up with one hand. And I'm just going to throw 2 balls in. One to make some noise, and 2 to try and, if they are there and they're up in the water, try and drive them down. So it'd be really interesting now to see if I get a response. And on certain days, you've got to keep throwing balls in. I think because it's been quite still today, I think if it had had a bit more of a chop on it, you know, a bit windier, I think you would have got the fish to settle on the bottom properly. But sometimes you've got, it's like that feeder today, it's so obvious you've got to keep casting. Really, you know, literally the feeder hits the bottom, you leave it there for 2 or 3 minutes and you're better off winding it back in again. If you sit there, nothing happens. You're better off, the bites are coming either on the drop or just as the feeder settles. So I just want to try it on the pole. There we go. I had a bite immediately. So it just goes to show that the fish are there, they're probably off the bottom, and if you can throw some balls in, make some noise, I think a certain percentage of the fish follow them balls down to the bottom. Where sometimes you wouldn't think there was a fish in your peg. Let's just see if I can see what happens this time. And in the summer, when it warms up, you can just do this closer in. You know, I'm fishing 30 metres today, but obviously as it warms up, you can just bring everything closer in. Shallower water, so it's a lot easier to throw balls of ground bait in by hand. There's an indication then, I think that was probably a liner, so it's definitely worked. It's definitely got fish back in me peg. Well, I've just changed over the double caster. Obviously chuck them 2 balls in. It's not made a massive difference today. Still have to wait. I've still got to be quite patient. It's not heaving, Not sure what this is actually. Might be a big roach. Should be a lovely fish to finish off with if it is. Yeah, it's fighting like a big roach. Oh yes, lovely big roach. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. I must admit, that's better than any bream, to be honest. Look at that. What an absolute beautiful fish to finish off with. Let's get him in the net. Probably a pound, that fish actually. Really nailed it. Literally the shells on the end, double caster. These are the sort of things you've got to try. Well, there you go, really. Summarise on the day, really. The feeder was as I expected. The temperature's gone up a little bit. It's not warm yet, but it's getting there. The most obvious thing today was I've had to keep casting. It's been a real difficult day. You've got to be really working at it, going through different baits, putting ground bait in on its own, then putting some pellets through, then maybe a bit of corn. I did try putting some red maggots through, didn't make any difference at all. The case was to keep casting and catch as the feeder settled, or some of them were probably 3 foot off the bottom. Just had to keep casting out, but plug in the feeder really, really softly for the ground bait. Obviously, while I was fishing the feeder, I primed the pole line up, fed that 5 balls at the start, really soft, and then cupped in during the day while I was fishing the feeder, and then loose feeding like I said. But the pole's been okay. There's probably not a lot in it, to be honest, as in fish wise. The fish were definitely bigger on the feeder, so in hindsight, in a match situation, I'd have been a fool coming off the feeder. But that's fishing, that's what we do. But I would never ever come to a venue like this as it gets warmer in a match and just set up one thing. That pole line some days can be absolutely brilliant, and as it warms up, those fish will come into shallow water. So I'm going to show you what I caught now, and I'll see you guys next time on Think Fishing, where I'm going to be catching carp. See you then. Well, this is what I've caught in approximately about 4 hours today. Like I said, mostly on the feeder, but actually catching fish. It was probably 50-50, to be honest, between the pole and the feeder. But what a fantastic venue to come and catch bream and roach. Probably upwards of, I've let some go already. I'm not sure what's in there. Probably 60 pound, I would have thought. Look at that lot. Absolutely fantastic fishing at sheer water.